There's this fear that I have. It's kind of ever present, really. This fear that I'll get old, past my prime, and look back on my life with an immense amount of regret. That I'll spend my final years longing for a redo of a life I very clearly blew. I worry that I'll never be the person childhood me dreamed of being, that I'll never make my parents proud, that I'll never truly find the person meant for me, if at all. I worry that I'll be pigeonholed in a job I despise, stuck doing mundane work for an employer who only sees me as a measure of productivity. I worry that the elderly me will be surrounded by people who are there because they have to be, not because they want to be. I worry I'll become a cautionary tale, an example of what not to do, and genuinely, it terrifies me. But there's one aspect in all of this that I find somewhat comforting. I am not alone. We all feel this sense of urgency to be accomplished, to become somebody before our internal battery rusts. This feeling is constant, a reminder that our time here is limited. This is intimidating, to say the least. However, I can't help but feel like there's a thing or two I'm missing. As much as I'd hate to admit it, a lot of these worries stem from one thing: the constant grinding pursuit of wealth. Most of us have dreams and aspirations beyond surviving. We want to be able to take care of the ones we love, and to do that, we need a very, very strong foundation of wealth. That's the thing though. How? How do we lift ourselves above everyone else in pursuit of the same thing? Sure, we can try, but if we're not doing it right? What if the path we've taken isn't meant for us? What if we're wasting precious time? So we end up not doing anything. We decide to never take the initiative because the alternative is far more terrifying. There's safety in the mundane. Now, I was on and off in this pursuit for what feels like most of my adult life. Once in a while, I'd get this rush of energy, or something would inspire me to push towards these goals, and after a month or two, things just seemed to fall off track. The honeymoon phase of this hunt for success ends, and you're back to square one. This is frustrating, as I'm sure some of you know. It seems like each time it would happen, I'd be less inclined to try again. This defeatist attitude seeps in. This lack of progress leads to an immense amount of inner turmoil. You begin doubting your skills, your confidence dwindles, you're neglecting your health, you become a recluse. What's the point of even trying anymore if your main goals, your main aspirations seem so far out of reach that no matter how hard you try, you get nowhere? This circle of trying and quitting is so common, so unbelievably difficult to break. Trust me, I've been there. There's a reason I made this video though, and it's not to try and be dismal or to try and scare you. It's an attempt to show you that this does not have to be permanent. So, where does it start? It begins with money. Yes, I mentioned wealth prior in this video, but I mean actual money. See, my definition of wealth doesn't necessarily mean dollars and cents. It's a combination of things: relationships, skills, health, love. All of these things make life incredibly more enjoyable. However, the pursuit of money has nearly bankrupted my soul. It's been one of the main causes of neglect for almost everything else in my life. See, I've been so caught up in the pursuit of monetary gain that I've completely neglected the now. Don't get me wrong, money is necessary for survival and it absolutely helps with stress, but believe me when I tell you, it isn't everything. There's this quote from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I'm sure you've heard it before.
Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
I've always loved this quote, though I've never really applied it. I just stored it in the back of my mind with every other guru pitch or self-help idea. But as it turns out, he was right. Oftentimes we fantasize about what we'd do if we could just get to that place we want to be, if we could have the income to take care of everyone we love. This pursuit often leads us to cutting corners, taking the quickest route to where we want to go. The problem is, these corners are potentially more valuable than the goal itself, and we don't even realize it. These corners I'm speaking of are the other factors you neglect while in pursuit of money. Things like your health or your social life. Most of my adulthood was spent cutting these corners, desperately chasing after the next dollar, clinging on to the idea that the end would justify the means. I'd be rich, be able to take my family out of any financial troubles, able to support any creative pursuits I might have. I could sit and make indie films, I could travel uninterrupted, I would finally be able to chase my dreams. I wish it were that simple. Money is not everything it's made up to be. The law of diminishing returns states that at some point, emotionally, it won't make a difference if you're making $1 million or $10 million. You plateau at around $200K a year, and once you do, more money doesn't necessarily mean more happiness. It's only when we're in desperate need of it that our perceptions change. Nevertheless, for years I stayed the course. I've made progress, sure, but it consumed me. I allowed myself to lose interest in any form of self-care. I let my weight balloon to unhealthy levels. My diet was horrendous because I thought that all of this, every negative aspect in my life, could be dismissed if I could just make enough money. I wouldn't need to develop a personality. I wouldn't need to work on myself. Money felt like a solution to nearly everything, a crutch to rule them all. So what if the relationships don't feel genuine? Any attention is good attention, right? This, of course, backfired tremendously. I became afraid of socializing. Nearly every discussion I'd have centered around money, and I'd be surprised to find other people disassociating during conversation. Yet still, I'd brush it off. They just don't get it. I'd tell myself over and over, having dismissed any red flags in my behavior as a lack of understanding on their part. After all, I'm doing what the gurus told me. I'm chasing after the tailored suits, the luxury cars. I was hustling. I was chasing wealth. There's no way I was wrong, right? There's these two scenes in the movie Click that are sort of burned into my mind. The first is when Adam Sandler's character, Michael, is busy working while his father attempts to show him a magic trick that he's loved since he was little. Michael coldly brushes his father off, suggesting he doesn't have time for these silly childhood games, his head buried in his files. His father Ted exits, but not before we get a glimpse of the pain drawn across his face. The bond he once cherished is almost non-existent. The son he loves and adores is, well, a corporate shell of what he once was. The second scene is Michael chasing after his family in the pouring rain, begging for their forgiveness, having realized that his life spent chasing a dollar no longer meant anything. As he sprawls onto the cold pavement, he utters the words, "Family comes first," and after a brief exchange, passes away. Now, this is of course just a movie, and the term family could be extended to mean any relationship you deem valuable. Though this feels more accurate than I'd like to admit. It's unfortunate, but there's really no shortcut to success, and I could promise you that the people you love would rather have your presence than the money. But let me backtrack here a bit. Now, I'm not saying money isn't important. We all aspire to do bigger things, to achieve more. I'm just saying everyone's perception of success is different. You may unknowingly be chasing someone else's idea of happiness, dedicating a lifetime to a cause that deep down you know might not be yours. Life is not a race, it's a marathon. Ask anyone at the top. So, let's say we've avoided the money trap. We've diverted our disastrous pursuit, but the question is, what happens now? We still have our dreams, we still have bills, we still have relationships to nurture. Where do we go from here? Unfortunately, I can't give you a straight answer. Life is complex. Everyone's life is different. Every relationship warrants a certain kind of effort. Every dream you have requires a certain path. I'd love to believe magic is real, but unfortunately, none of us have a crystal ball. However, all of us are along for this ride, so what I can do is tell you what's worked for me. Part of my lack of progress in anything I do is caused by the sense of urgency I feel. You desperately want to get there, but aren't willing to take the full steps necessary, simply because it feels like there isn't enough time. You'll get to the finish line, but only if you pace yourself. Start small. What easier steps can you take to push yourself forward? Those first few accomplishments will be the much needed confidence boost you'll need to approach your larger, more intimidating goals. You'll prove to yourself that these goals are achievable. You just have to set the bar a little higher every time. Eventually, you'll be in a league you never thought possible. This next part is important, so pay close attention. Self-deprecation is the enemy of progression. If the way you speak to yourself isn't how you'd speak to someone you love, consider reassessing. You deserve far more credit than you give yourself. Self-love is the quickest way to achieving the most self-actualized version of yourself. Now, at some point, I'm sure you've rolled your eyes at this idea. Self-love is a cliche after all, but here's a thought to consider. When you post a selfie, a statement, or an idea, what replies do you seem to remember the most? What responses do you cling to mentally? The praise or the criticism. It's human nature to dismiss kind words as disingenuous while hyper-focusing on the negatives and holding them as truthful. There's this constant want to be accepted, and if you aren't satisfied with what you see in the mirror, it's hard to feel like you're making any progress at all. This self-doubt creeps in and you begin to lose steam in the pursuit of these goals. Love yourself first. It's something I wish I'd learned so much sooner. To some of you, those lucky enough to have everything together, I commend you. It isn't easy. To those of you who don't, you also deserve praise. It's not easy dealing with life. It involves constant effort. There's so many aspects of our lives that demand our attention, so much we have to balance or risk falling behind. Don't get me wrong, it's okay to lag a bit, but only as long as you dust yourself off and continue. You are worthy of self-love. You are not alone in your struggles. There's ups and downs, and at times you'll certainly feel like giving up and sinking back into self-pity. It's inevitable. But each time you brush these thoughts off, each time you dismiss these fears, your willpower grows stronger. It becomes easier to push forward. In closing, I'll leave you with these final words from Winston Churchill. Never give in, except to convictions of honor and good sense. This has been a Renzi production. Thank you for watching.